It is late November 2008. Bernie Madoff, a man who built an untouchable empire, is staring at a bank account balance of just $234 million. But there is a massive problem. His clients have just requested over $7 billion in withdrawals. The ultimate ticking clock has reached zero. Today you'll learn exactly how the greatest financial illusion in American history finally collapsed, minute by minute, and the fatal mistakes that brought it down. It is late November 2008. Outside the Lipstick Building in New York City, the air is freezing and the financial world is in a total panic. Major banks have collapsed overnight. Everyone is terrified. But up on the 17th floor, inside the highly secure offices of Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC, everything looks completely calm. Bernie Madoff, a Wall Street legend, sits quietly at his desk. To the world, he is a genius who makes people rich safely. But right now, he is staring at a computer screen that tells a terrifying truth. His clients are panicking. They are frantically sending in paperwork, begging to pull their cash out. The withdrawal requests piling up on his desk add up to an unimaginable $7 billion. Madoff looks at his actual bank balance. It reads just $234 million. The math is completely broken. Imagine you have a piggy bank. Your friends give you $10 each to hold safely. Instead of locking it away, you spend it on yourself. When friend A asks for their money back, you take $10 from a new friend, friend B, and hand it to friend A. Everyone thinks the piggy bank is full, but what happens when everyone asks for their money back on the exact same day? The piggy bank is empty. The game is over. That is exactly what was happening. Madoff wasn't a trading genius. For decades, he had been running a massive Ponzi scheme. When clients gave him money, he didn't actually invest it using his famous split-strike conversion strategy. That was just a fancy, complicated term used to confuse people. Instead, he just deposited their cash straight into a normal checking account. He was committing massive investment fraud and securities fraud by simply printing out fabricated statements to show his clients fake profits. Because Madoff targeted tightly knit communities, charities, and country clubs, a deceptive tactic known as affinity fraud, people trusted him completely. They ignored the obvious red flags, like how his returns never seemed to drop even when the whole stock market was crashing. But now, the illusion was shattering. The largest Ponzi scheme in human history was suffocating under its own weight. The global market crash acted like a giant vacuum, sucking the fake money out of the system. Madoff had survived close calls before, keeping his dark secrets hidden from the SEC during their incredibly weak audits. But this time, no amount of financial fraud could save him. There was absolutely no new cash coming in to pay the old investors. He picked up his phone, desperately calling his oldest, wealthiest friends to beg for a cash lifeline. He asked for hundreds of millions of dollars, hoping to plug the massive hole in his sinking ship. But the economy was frozen. Nobody had the money to spare. The walls were finally closing in on his shadow empire. He had built a fortress on trust, but that trust was evaporating into thin air. Behind closed doors, the man who had fooled the smartest minds on Wall Street realized he was entirely trapped by his own lies. The ultimate ticking clock had reached zero, and the final 48 hours of his freedom had officially begun. Madoff sits in his luxurious Manhattan office, staring at the phone. He begins dialing the private numbers of the wealthiest people he knows. For decades, getting a personal call from him was considered a rare honor. People used to literally beg him to take their money. But today his voice is tight. He is asking for cash, massive amounts of it, right now. He pitches them brand new, highly exclusive investment opportunities. He promises incredible returns, but behind his calm voice, he is desperately attempting to commit blatant wire fraud across state lines. He needs these fresh deposits to pay off the terrifying mountain of angry clients demanding their cash back. But the timing is an absolute disaster. The 2008 economic crash has terrified every major investor on the planet. Global credit is completely frozen. Nobody is handing over fresh millions. The few longtime friends who do wire him cash barely make a dent in the $7 billion problem. Before we look at the exact moment Madoff realizes he is completely trapped, I have a quick question for you. If you discovered your entire life savings were tied up in a massive lie, what is the very first thing you would do? Let me know down in the comments. And if you are enjoying this deep dive, please like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe to Fleece. We are on a mission to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us expose the truth behind these insane financial mysteries. Back on the 17th floor, the atmosphere is suffocating. Madoff knows the awful truth hidden in his fake ledgers. The total paper value on his clients' monthly statements says they have a staggering $65 billion. But that number is a complete ghost. It never existed. The actual cash people physically handed him over the years was somewhere between $18–20 billion, and almost all of that is already gone. It was spent on funding his lavish lifestyle, buying yachts, and paying off earlier investors to keep them quiet. His entire shadow empire is just a brutal, low-tech engine for money laundering. Cash comes in, gets shuffled around personal bank accounts to look clean, and goes right back out to someone else. But now that incoming flow of fresh money has completely stopped, Madoff stares at the massive stack of withdrawal requests on his desk. He knows the rules. If a brokerage firm cannot pay its clients, government regulators step in immediately. He knows the FBI is going to eventually start asking questions. He tries to figure out a way to magically produce billions of dollars out of thin air. He listens to the hum of the dot matrix printers churning out more fake receipts. But none of it can save him now. The untouchable king of Wall Street is finally drowning. It is the morning of December 9, 2008. Inside the offices of Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC, the pressure is suffocating. Bernie Madoff is cornered, but instead of surrendering, he makes a deeply irrational move. He walks up to his two sons, Mark and Andrew, and calmly announces that he plans to distribute over $170 million in company bonuses, and he wants to pay them out 2 months early to his sons who operate the legitimate trading division a few floors away. This sounds insane. They know the firm is practically bleeding out, struggling to pay thousands of desperate clients who are begging for their cash back. How can their father possibly justify handing out millions in early bonuses? The glaring red flags have finally become impossible to ignore. The math simply does not work, and for the first time in their lives, the sons refuse to just nod and look away. They demand a real explanation. The very next morning, December 10, the tense confrontation moves from the corporate office to Madoff's luxurious Manhattan penthouse. The apartment is dead quiet, heavily insulated from the freezing panic of the city below. Ruth Madoff is nearby in the next room. Bernie sits down heavily in his armchair, opposite his two boys. These are grown men who have admired him, defended his name, and built their entire lives around his legendary reputation. Madoff looks at them, and the untouchable, ice-cold facade finally shatters. He breaks down. He looks his sons in the eye and tells them he is completely finished. He has absolutely nothing left. His highly exclusive asset management business is, in his exact words, just one big lie. He confesses that he isn't a trading mastermind. He is the sole architect of the largest Ponzi scheme in human history. The boys listen in absolute paralyzed horror as their father admits to decades of systemic securities fraud, rampant wire fraud, and catastrophic financial fraud. The towering empire they thought they were inheriting was entirely fake. The The staggering $65 billion that loyal clients believed they held in their portfolios was a complete ghost. Madoff admits that the actual physical cash, somewhere between $18–20 billion, handed over by trusting investors, is simply gone. It had been burned through relentless money laundering, funding their yachts, their homes, and keeping the massive predatory investment fraud alive. Imagine the oxygen instantly leaving the room. Your father, your mentor, has just casually destroyed your entire reality. Every meal, every vacation, every dollar your family ever spent was funded by stealing from charities, retirees, and your own closest friends. The ticking clock has finally stopped. Madoff tells them his final desperate plan. He wants to take the remainder of the week to quietly distribute whatever cash is left to a few favored friends and family members before the inevitable collapse. He expects his sons to keep his secret just a little longer, but Mark and Andrew do not agree. They stand up, walk out of the penthouse, and leave their father sitting completely alone in the silent ruins of his own making. The moment the elevator doors close behind Mark and Andrew, the illusion is permanently shattered. It is the evening of December 10th, 2008. The brothers step out onto the freezing Manhattan pavement, terrified and struggling to process what they just heard. For their entire lives, their father was a god. Now he is a monster. They do not go back to the trading desk. They do not attempt to fix the math. Instead, they immediately call an attorney. Within hours, that lawyer dials the authorities, sending sheer panic through the highest levels of the government. Federal prosecutors and the SEC are urgently alerted. The impenetrable fortress has finally been breached from the inside. Meanwhile, back in his opulent Upper East Side penthouse, Bernie Madoff remains utterly oblivious to his son's desperate actions. He sits in his quiet study, staring at a stack of freshly signed checks, totaling $173 million. He sincerely believes he still has a full week left to operate his shadow empire. He plans to quietly distribute this remaining cash to his closest friends, favorite relatives, and most loyal employees before the inevitable collapse becomes public. He thinks he is still in control, but the DOJ is already moving with terrifying speed. They understand exactly who they are dealing with. They know that a mastermind with vast international connections could easily destroy critical evidence, wire remaining wealth offshore, or simply vanish into the night. The next morning, December 11th, the gray winter sun barely lights up the city before heavy footsteps echo down the pristine hallway of Madoff's highly exclusive residential building. Special agents from the FBI approach his front door. They do not wait for a polite invitation. When the 70-year-old financier slowly opens the door, he is wearing his typical soft pajamas. He looks incredibly tired, visibly hollowed out by months of relentless scrambling. The lead investigator steps forward, his voice low but slicing right through the dead silence of the luxury apartment. He looks Madoff directly in the eye and offers him one final, almost rhetorical lifeline. The agent tells him they are there to find out if there is a simple, innocent explanation for the massive financial black hole at his firm. Madoff pauses. He looks at the grim faces of the agents, looks around his lavish, artificially funded home, and sighs heavily. He knows the ultimate charade is completely over. There is no brilliant math equation to hide behind anymore. There is no fake paper trail that can possibly save him now. There is no innocent explanation, he whispers. He completely surrenders on the spot. He quietly admits to the agents that he had been paying his loyal investors with money that simply was not there. The agents step into the apartment, the sharp, metallic click of handcuffs breaking the quiet morning air. The legendary Wall Street titan is officially placed in custody. The most devastating financial predator in modern history is finally captured, not by a brilliant forensic audit, But because his own flesh and blood refused to sink with his sinking ship, the heavy steel door of a federal prison cell slammed shut. Bernard Madoff, the former titan of Wall Street, trades his tailored suits for a standard-issue khaki uniform. The illusion is permanently over, but for the thousands of people who trusted him, the nightmare is just beginning. When investigators finally pry open the ledgers at Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC, they do not find complex trading algorithms or a brilliant split-strike conversion strategy. They find a catastrophic financial crime scene. The fabricated statements mailed to clients each month proudly displayed a combined wealth of nearly $65 billion. But that staggering number is a complete ghost. Forensic accountants dig through the wreckage and determine that the actual physical cash handed over by victims, money drained from hospitals, universities, and retirees through deeply personal affinity fraud, was somewhere between $18 to $20 billion. This operation wasn't a sophisticated market maneuver. It was a brutal, relentless engine of money laundering and wire fraud. By repeatedly ignoring glaring red flags, overworked and inexperienced regulators at the SEC had allowed the largest Ponzi scheme in human history to grow completely unchecked for over a decade. Now the devastation is absolute. Victims who thought they were financially secure are suddenly forced to sell their family homes, abandon their children's college plans, and return to work just to survive the crushing reality of this financial fraud. On June 29, 2009, Madoff stands in a packed, dead-silent Manhattan courtroom. The judge looks down at the architect of this unprecedented investment fraud and delivers a sentence designed to send a chilling, permanent message. 150 years behind bars to strip away every last piece of his illicit empire. The DOJ and federal prosecutors secure a staggering $170 billion forfeiture order. The mastermind of this colossal securities fraud will never see the outside world again. He will eventually die in a federal medical prison in 2021, entirely stripped of his power and his name. But the story does not end with a prison sentence. A court-appointed trustee named Irving Picard launches a relentless global hunt to find the missing cash. He doesn't just go after the mastermind, he targets the massive feeder funds and wealthy investors who quietly pulled out billions in fake profits before the collapse. The FBI spends years untangling a web of international bank accounts, tracing the invisible threads of stolen wealth. Through aggressive lawsuits, Picard forces these entities to return the money they withdrew. In a historic triumph for justice, this unprecedented recovery effort eventually claws back over $14 billion for the victims. The untouchable king of Wall Street built his magnificent castle on a fragile foundation of lies. And when the global economy froze, it took just 48 hours for the greatest illusion in American history to crumble into dust.